I need to tell you something. Really hear it. The thing you think will save your marriage. More date nights, better communication, finally winning the argument. Isn't it? Not even close. I'm Eleanor, 83 years old, married to my husband Frank for 58 years before he passed. The 2 years after he was gone, I went back over every single one of them, trying to understand what actually made it work. Not what we said made it work, the real version. It took me 60 years to figure out. I'll give it to you in 8 minutes. Here's what nobody tells young couples. Love doesn't keep a marriage alive. I loved Frank on our worst day, the same as our best. Love was never the problem. The real question, the one that decides whether a marriage survives, almost nobody says it out loud at the wedding. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what it is, and it'll contradict almost everything you've been told. Everybody who's sat across from a marriage counselor has heard the same advice. Communicate more. Compromise. Don't go to bed angry. None of that's wrong. It's just not the thing. There's a man named John Gottman, a researcher, not a poet, not a preacher. He sat young married couples down in an apartment wired with cameras, watched them argue about money and dishes and in-laws, then waited years, sometimes over a decade. He wanted to know which couples would still be together and which wouldn't. Here's what shook me when Frank's nephew explained it at the kitchen table. Just by watching how a couple argued, researchers could predict whether that marriage would survive, not by how much they loved each other, not by the wedding pictures, by something much smaller happening underneath every conversation. I sat with that because Frank and I argued. Lord, did we argue. 58 years, money, his mother, the thermostat, the boys. So if arguing wasn't the problem, what was? Here's the lie that wrecks more marriages than infidelity ever has. You've been told the goal is to stop fighting. It's not. The goal is what happens inside the fight. And more than that, what happens in the ordinary, forgettable moments in between. That's where marriages are won or lost, not the big blow-ups. The 1,000 tiny moments nobody's watching. Frank and I didn't know that for 20 years. We learned it the hard way. I'm not going to make you wait 58 years like I did. Here's what surprised me most. Researchers found happy couples argue just as much as unhappy ones. The difference isn't whether you fight, it's the ratio underneath it. For every harsh word, stable marriages carry roughly 5 soft ones to balance it. My friend Earl, married 41 years, his wife Doris, different Doris, used to say he never apologized outright, but he'd bring her coffee mid-argument, still fuming, set it down without a word. That was his 5. That was his repair. Contempt is the one that kills marriages fastest. Eye-rolling, sneering, treating your spouse like they're beneath you. Earl told me once, the day I catch myself looking at her like she's stupid, that's the day I know I'm in real trouble. He never let himself get there. Frank and I fought plenty, but he never once made me feel small while he did it. That was the secret nobody told us at the wedding. Not whether you fight, but whether you fight like you still respect the person across the table. If that hit you, subscribe now. The next part ended more marriages in my lifetime than anything else. Here's the one nobody warns you about. Researchers found they could predict divorce by listening to how a spouse talked about their partner alone in an interview no one else was around, not how they fought, how they remembered. My neighbor Carolyn, married to Hosea for 30 years, ask her about him, her face would open up. Hosea's the most patient man I ever met, she'd say, even mid-argument season. That's fondness and admiration, the cushion underneath everything else. Then there was Yvette. Her husband left eventually. Looking back, you could have called it years before it happened. Ask her about him, she'd sigh first. Led with the complaint, the way he chewed, the job he never got, a whole museum of grievances, and she walked visitors through it. Frank used to catch me telling stories about him to my sister. Even when I was annoyed with him that week, I always led with something good. He's stubborn, but Lord, he's loyal. That's the tell, not what you say to your spouse. What you say about them when you think no one's grading you. Frank's last year, his hand shook too much to hold a coffee cup. One morning he tried anyway, spilled it across the table, and just sat there, ashamed. I didn't say a word about the mess. I sat down, took his shaking hands in mine, and said, "Tell me about that woodpecker again." He laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. 58 years of small reaches, soft repairs, good words said behind his back. That's what was still standing when everything else had worn away. Not romance, just 500,000 tiny moments of choosing him. So here it is, the whole 60 years in 3 things. Notice the small bids, the woodpecker moments, 'cause that's where love is built or starved. Fight if you have to, but stack 5 soft moments under every hard one, and never let contempt walk into the room. And watch what you say about your spouse when they're not there to hear it. That's the truest measure of what's inside you. None of this is romantic. It was never supposed to be. Love isn't the fireworks. It's the 1,000 small repairs nobody applauds. Frank's gone 4 years now, and I still catch myself looking up for woodpeckers. So tell me, when's the last time someone pointed something out to you and you actually looked up? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. I'm Eleanor, and I'll see you in the next one.